Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Binge Battle. I am Mark Ellis, and you're not, but you are here to celebrate one of the great TV shows of all time. You see, way back in 1975, a signal left New York City, went way up into outer space, and came back into everyone's TV sets around 11:30 p.m. No, it wasn't the Coneheads, or it wasn't just the Coneheads. No, this was a signal that would change the history of television, comedy, blockbuster filmmaking, and so much more forevermore. We're, of course, talking about Saturday Night Live, or as the kids say now, SNL, which has just recently entered its 47th season. So, all the way back in the day when Wolverines were eating fingertips, up until modern day when a Kardashian had some fun at the rest of their family's expense in a monologue, we're going to be celebrating the best, the brightest, and debating who is the all-time GOAT in a number of categories all around Saturday Night Live. Just think of the history of television sketch comedy, what it was before and since. If we don't have Saturday Night Live, we probably don't have programs like Mad TV or The State, and we certainly don't have movies like The Blues Brothers or Wayne's World, or even movies that are ancillary related to Saturday Night Live, like Bridesmaids, Beverly Hills Cop, Black Sheep, to name a few. Well, maybe we should have gone Tommy Boy instead. But again, this is why we're here to debate our favorite things within the world of Saturday Night Live. I am so excited to welcome back to the show two of just my all-time favorite humans, good friends of mine, and very passionate Saturday Night Live fans who maybe entered it in slightly different eras, but they're here with their opinions and they are fervent nonetheless. So, coming in first, as they wanted to be known as Age Before Beauty, it is Ken Napzok. You know him, you love him from such endeavors as Force Center and the Good People Association. He's also a terrific stand-up comic and sketch comedy performer. Ken, I said that right. They are comedy sketches, not skits, correct?
If you say skit, I'm walking out of here. Yeah, I thought we were here to debate Howard Cosell's Saturday Night Live show, which was a year prior or so to SNL. I got the wrong show. I'm out of here. No, it's
It
great.
certainly was, and it's funny you bring up Howard Cosell because SNL has very few peers when it comes to how long it's been on the air for. The Tonight Show and Monday Night Football are really the only ones that come to mind. And so, when did you first enter SNL? It was probably just referred to as Saturday Night Live back then. When did that first hit the Ken Napzok lexicon? Was it a friend recommending it to you? Was it a particular sketch? Your gateway into Studio 8H.
Oh man, and you're right. When I remember when people started calling it SNL, I was like, "That's genius! Shorten it with the letters." Yeah. For me, it was I think we all kind of discovered the show. Every generation around that junior high, early high school age, where you're kind of learning comedy, learning your style. For me, that was late '80s. The 15th season, the anniversary season, which man, back then seemed like 15 years. It was around then. I'd heard about it before, been familiar with it a little bit. I'd seen some sketches or something pop up. And remember, this is pre-internet, all those type of things. I think Comedy Central was still at this time, and you'd watch, Billy Crystal say, "You look marvelous," and I didn't really know what that was. It was that late '80s time period where I jumped into it.
All right. And so Ken is here, and I've known him a long time, almost as long as I've known of Saturday Night Live. And joining him and debating him in at least 4 rounds of epic SNL category contention is one of the co-creators and hosts of the very successful Whirl Girls endeavor. And you can catch her regularly on SCN Live amongst her many other programs. This is Steph Sabraw. Steph, welcome back to Binge Battle. We're so happy to have you back in this world. Do you refer to it, have you ever referred to it as Saturday Night Live, or have you always known it as SNL?
I've always known it as SNL, but I am glad we're talking about age and beauty. You two are timeless beauties of this century, and I'm glad to be on screen with both of you. But always SNL, unless we're saying live from New York. It's Saturday Night Live.
It's one of the more fun things to exclaim when you're in New York, even if you have nothing to do with the particular show that night. So, what was your first experience with Saturday Night Live or SNL? Was it a sketch? Was it a particular performer that stood out to you and you wanted to know more about that person? How did you first come across this beloved show?
Well, I was a young lad in the early 2000s. My parents always had SNL on, and the 2000s was like the era of Tina Fey, and we also had Will Ferrell. So, and that was at the time of all the election sketches. So that's when I started being like, "What is that?" I didn't really understand it, but it was funny to me. And then when I got in college, my roommates were equally obsessed with SNL. So we would have these like quarterly SNL dinners where we would all show up in character. And ever since then, it's just been a staple. I just love it so much. It's shaped who I am. And I think so many of us entertainers, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing without SNL.
However, y'all are watching this, whatever device you're enjoying it with, we appreciate your eyeballs and we love your comments after the fact. Whatever app you're using, whatever device you enjoy watching us on, let us know, or you can follow us all on social media. And I think Steph's going to get a lot of followers if you promise to post some of the pictures of you and all your friends from college dressed up in character. Is that a deal we can make right now?
It's an absolute deal. It was killer. I'm not going to lie. We slayed it. I will post them.
Okay. And Ken, now I do have to counter with you. We have David S. Pumpkin's favorite holiday is almost upon us as we tape this. So have you ever been as an SNL character for Halloween?
I have not, but you mentioned David S. Pumpkins. That year I was at Disneyland and I had on a pumpkin tie that was black with like orange pumpkins, like the suit that Hanks was wearing. And someone, a young lady jumped in front of the line, pointed at me and went, "David S. Pumpkins," and ran off. It was the closest I'll get to Tom Hanks fame.
And Ken has not worn the attire since.
No.
So we're going to get kicked off here with round number 1 of Binge Battle. It is here. It is time to debate the latest and greatest with Saturday Night Live or SNL. I still remember when Kentucky Fried Chicken was not KFC. And I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense now. You take out the fried, it sounds healthy. And that's what we're here today for. Healthy debate all the way around. And we're kicking off with round number 1. Funniest sketch. What is the funniest sketch? We make it hard for the competitors today. Of all the great sketches that you've ever witnessed on SNL, Steph, Sabraw, 1 minute or less on the clock. What is the funniest sketch in the history of the show?
Hardest question I've ever been asked, but I'll start by saying, well, Lottie freaking da, we're going in the van down by the river, because we can't talk about SNL without talking about Chris Farley, who is such an icon. And you want to talk about the funniest character, in my opinion, that he's ever had is Matt Foley. You start this sketch with David Spade and Christina Applegate. They're getting in trouble for smoking the good old devil's lettuce. And then the parents bring in this motivational speaker, Matt Foley, which is how I feel every motivational speaker should be. Like, I don't care about your accomplishments. I want to learn from your failures. And that's what he did. And every single line this man threw out was insane. Thrice divorced, living in a van down by the river. And then you throw that with the physical comedy, some of the best physical comedy you'll ever get on screen. You end this sketch with him jumping accidentally on and breaking the table. This sketch was so funny to the audience. And they had to cut around Phil Hartman and Julie Sweeney because they were laughing so hard. And it's like, you knew greatness was on screen when you have two of the greats, you have to cut around them. So for those reasons and above, a van down by the river forever and always.
Yeah, 2 of the cast members who were seemingly unbreakable at the time, helpless dandelions in the hands of Chris Farley. Here's you, here's Matt, there's you, there's Ken with your rebuttal. Not yet, you just get your minute opening statement, no pressure.
Okay, my opening statement. Yeah, I could probably fight for every of her Steph's answers as well as mine, right? That's the challenge of this debate. Funniest sketch, but also I'm going to list one of the more influential sketches. Steph actually mentioned it prior. I'm going to the 2000 debate sketches, especially the first one. And this is something SNL and politics have been going strong for a long time, but this one has an important legacy to it. The words like strategery, lockbox, Daryl Hammond's Al Gore, Will Ferrell's George W. Bush, and then Chris Parnell's Jim Lehrer. Funny, on point, poignant political satire that got to the point where actual people in the campaigns were studying these sketches to see almost like, what are we doing out there? How can we win this election? What are the people thinking about us? That had never really happened before. George Herbert Walker Bush thought Dana Carvey was cute and roughed up his hair once. Hey, you're right. 1,000 points of light. Dukakis in the debate. And I can't believe I'm losing this guy. We all remember that kind of stuff. But this one, I actually think helped influence the election, muddle the election, however you want to look at it. This was also just so funny, and down to the lines, the pinpoint accuracy of the satire, as well as the parody of what was going on. And it is still the standard bearer for political sketches going forward from 2000 on. You're still trying to reach this. It's not just the candidates thinking they're cute. It's the candidates going, what is everyone saying about me? Because I need to know.
It is an underrated political influencer when it comes to presidential elections. As far back as when people quote, I was told there would be no math. I don't know if they know that they're referencing SNL or politics, but you're doing both. All right. So we got two pretty great sketches on the board. The 2000, very, I don't want to say controversial, but let's just say it's a sketch that may have changed some votes one way or the other with the political debates. And then we also have, of course, the van down by the river. So, Steph, now, about 30 seconds for your rebuttal. Why is your sketch and your van down by the river better than a political debate?
Well, we were asked to give the best sketch, and Ken has listed sketches, which leads me to believe that it needed the whole facade to give the punch. Even though I agree that it did change the way that we have political satire on screen. Even Will Ferrell was quoted by saying that he thinks that he may have swayed the election by humanizing George Bush. And I know that you both pointed that out, but we know how that ended. So while it was funny, was it worth it?
It's a great question posited by Steph there. So, Ken, your take on why this and maybe politics in general on SNL is better than any one hilarious sketch.
Well, look, here's the thing. I absolutely love Matt Foley as a character. Chris Farley, you could put Chippendales up there. You could put a lot of his sketches here. Absolutely, he deserves a spot. But it is also a great Second City sketch. That's where it came up. Odenkirk helped write and create the character over there. And some people had actually seen it before. And that's not new with Saturday Night Live. Let's be clear about that. New cast members do take some of their best sketches from their previous places and put them up here. But, what made it was maybe the breaking of the character. And sometimes for me, that doesn't mean it was a great sketch. Just means they got the cast members laughing or the guest host laughing. And that becomes more memorable than the actual content. But I was laughing too.
Okay. Yeah, it is a fair point that you bring up where sometimes the breaking of the character, it's like, you're kind of subterfuging the sketch just a little bit. I didn't see it necessarily in this one doing that, but the point is taken. So now we'll go to the final statement for each competitor. Then I really have the hard job here. I have to make a decision between these two. Steph, you're up on the clock first.
My final statement is that because of this character, I think that we have reduced the number of humans that are living in a van down by the river. And for that, you're a great patriot. And we owe a lot to this sketch.
Humans making better life decisions. It's a pretty tall mountain to scale. Ken, what do you got?
Look, we all know the right answer was the nude beach sketch from '86 where penis was said 43 times. We just didn't want to answer that one. Look, Matt Foley's great. Chris Farley is a legend. I still look at the influence of the first sketch, which set the tone. Even the sketches after were trying to reach the first sketch. But that was a good strategery, Steph, to try to get me on that technicality. I think it is, like I said, a standard bearer for sketches, and that's why it stands among the rest of them.
All right, so now this is the toughest part of the competition because I have to make a decision between these two brilliant answers, the 2000 election sketch or Matt Foley, the motivational speaker. The topic was originally funniest sketch, and so here's how I see this one going down, is that Saturday Night Live is known for many things, not the least of which, maybe most importantly, is that we can go there for a safe place to laugh at politics, because we all know that regardless of how you feel about politics, there's a lot of stress when it comes to that arena, and we need an outlet for it. SNL has given us that, and that is one of the show's strongest legacies. However, if you just sit me in front of a TV and you say, I'm going to make you laugh harder than you've ever laughed in your life for the duration of one sketch, I think that anything with Chris Farley is going to be way up there, including when he was playing Rudy Giuliani's son. But I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to say Van Down by the River might be the play. The way that it is set up, that he's been drinking coffee in the basement for hours, the way that it pays off with some physical comedy table breaking, it really is just a one of a kind, because Chris Farley was one of a kind, and he made Phil Hartman and Julia Sweeney break. So it's a great argument by Ken, but Steph Sabraw gets the point here. Steph, You are, we presume, not living in a van down by the river, but those curtains, are you, are we sure? Is it a camper?
No, yeah, this is a Lux camper. I might just run through the window just to show my appreciation to Chris Farley's comedy. Really
All
get
right,
into the bit.
Steph takes a 1-0 lead, and maybe we'll lean into a table later on in the show. But for right now, Ken, you find yourself trailing by 1 as we head into round number 2. Best sketch character. You yourself have been a lot of great sketch characters over your years in comedy. On SNL, what's the best sketch character of all time?
Well, not enough, as I got voted out of the system. Here, let me tell you what. We're going back to 1992 for the big year of it. Wayne Campbell, Garth Algar, Wayne's World. This is a sketch. You didn't just have to be there to experience it. The legacy lives on. One of, in fact, I think that the highest profitable Saturday Night Live movie is the first Wayne's World. It spawned an entire merch. There's a book. There's like I said, the movie, the sketch, the history of the sketch. Check one, sibilance. I heard that at a show the other day. People, it all comes from that. But it was a rock and roll feel. And when you heard that Aurora Cable 10 presents, you were at home and you and your friends started laughing. You didn't text, you called. You're doing a Wayne's World sketch, and you quoted it all through the next week and hoped they did it again. It was, to me, a modern template for what was to come. So much that Lorne Michaels saw it as that, and every other character they tried to make a movie out of it, it didn't quite work. Nothing could capture what was going on with Wayne and Garth, which is why for then, now, and hopefully forever, they're the best sketch characters of all time on SNL.
All right, Wayne and Garth are on the board out of Aurora, Illinois. Steph Sabraw, your minute is dedicated to which sketch character?
The best sketch character of all time for me is Debbie Downer, created by the one and only Rachel Dratch. Because first of all, if you're not worried about the increasing number of feline age, you're a monster. You're a monster. But when we Debbie Downer, she created this term, like how we refer to tissue paper as Kleenex. We refer to those horrible energy-sucking vampires that we all know the dinner table with as a Debbie Downer. We use this in everyday language, and this originated from an SNL sketch. That doesn't happen very often, if ever. Like, this is probably the most famous just two-liner that you hear so many times, and people don't even realize it originated from SNL and from Rachel Dratch herself. And I just think comedy is at its funniest when it's relatable. And that's why this character is so hilarious, because it is relatable. We know these people. We want to punch these people in the face. And the only way we can survive these people is by laughing at them. And that's exactly what happened. She broke the entire world every time she appeared on screen, because you have to laugh at the absurdity and the awfulness that is a Debbie Downer. And that's why she's the greatest sketch character of all time.
It's a pretty solid response, because we don't have this category today, best underrated cast member of all time. But if we did, Rachel Dratch is right at the top of my list. So, Ken, I'm going to give you 5 extra seconds, because first I want you to answer, have you ever been a Debbie Downer at a party? And then your rebuttal to Steph's answer.
That's a loaded question, because I am a Debbie Downer, and now maybe that's why I don't like the sketch. No, actually, I love the sketch, and I love Rachel Dratch here. But I'm going to tell you, 2021, I was in Lake Arrowhead. I was out for a walk, and there was a guy walking with his dog, and a car came, and he stepped out of the road, and the car drove by, and then the guy said, "Game on," and went back into the road with his dog. That's Wayne's World. There's 2 words that have a great swing, all those kind of things, as if, not, whatever you want to say. It set the bar back then. Once again, Steph loves laughing, because she loves when cast members break other people, which is not Rachel Dratch's fault for being one of the funniest people on the planet. But I just think for what the entire package was of what a best sketch character idea, the template for everything that came forward, like, I'll go get my Wayne's World book from 1992. I don't think there's a Debbie Downer one. Maybe there should be, but there isn't. And that's why I stick with them.
Wayne's World certainly has etched its way into the zeitgeist. Debbie Downer has too, and Steph made some great points about that. So, Steph, what is your counter to Ken's rebuttal? Why is Debbie Downer standing head and shoulders for you above Wayne and Garth?
Well, Ken, I hate to bring up the same argument, but we were asked best sketch character, and yours is characters, plural. Wayne's World was involved 2 characters. I know that it's a discrepancy. However, it was hilarious. I love Wayne's World. Mike Myers is one of the greatest of all time, one of my favorites of all time. But when you talk about the newer age, the the 2000s were an important era for SNL resurgence, and they really like stuck to pop culture in a way that they hadn't done in the prior years. Debbie Downer was one of those where she defined pop culture, defined a moment in pop culture, and it stayed consistent throughout the years. We're still quoting it now. It's 2021, and this was in the early 2000s.
I'm feeling not only the love of these characters from both of you, but I'm also feeling how much they've shaped your life, because I feel like Ken has modeled a lot of his career after Wayne and Garth, and I feel like Steph has modeled a lot of her career after not being a Debbie Downer, which congratulations. You both are rousing successes at your various endeavors, but Ken, you have to limit all that history that you have with these two knuckleheads into a final statement.
First of all, you're right. The 2000s were a resurgence. There was an election sketch in 2000 that helped revitalize the show. No, look, I'm never going to take anything away from Rachel Dratch. She's legitimately one of my favorites. And the technicality again, the producers accepted it. This is a dirty trick. This is strategery again on Steph's part. I'll just say this about Wayne and Campbell, Garth Algar. They are an entire generation of our fans. They're their favorite characters. They were a movement. They were a lifestyle. They influenced careers. They were the template, and I think they should be rewarded for being the template for everything that came before or came after, and maybe even before.
Beautiful, beautiful words from Ken. And now, Steph, your final statement, stumping for Debbie Downer.
Wayne and Garth are truly iconic. However, when we're talking, especially for me as a female SNL fan, I am looking for the big hitter comedians who are women. And Rachel Dratch with this character is so good at she brings up points that you hate to agree with. If someone told you at a table that they can't have kids, the conversation's over. No fun is to be had after that point. And that is just such a mic drop. And she did that every single time she appeared on screen. You just ended the screen. It was like a mini series, each episode with the intro. And she just mic dropped with the worst piece of news you could ever imagine and somehow left you in a happier mood.
I just saw that particular sketch you're talking about, and I always say don't want kids at parties to lighten the mood, and maybe I'm having the reverse effect. I'm not sure, but this is such a tough call to make, as all these categories are going to be today. I feel like this, and I will accept Wayne and Garth as one character as versus Debbie Downer. So I asked you all at the top of the show, what was your gateway into SNL? For me, it was Wayne and Garth, because I wasn't a regular viewer of the show at that period of time. I might have been a little too young. I'm not sure. But I remember the kids at school talking about this Wayne's World movie that was coming about. And I saw the poster. I'm like, who are? I've never heard of these guys. Saw the movie, gateway back into becoming a huge Saturday Night Live fan that I am today. And so they were very formative in my youth. And in addition to all the things that they have done for movies and for merch, they also helped a little band called Queen get to the back of the top of the charts early in the 1990s. Debbie Downer is such an important character because of the time period that Steph pointed out, is that 2000s, where we were sort of still in a hangover from the great cast and all the eventual movie stars that we had gotten in the early and mid 90s on Saturday Night Live. So it was an important statement to say, no, now we're here. Now it's our time. We're going to make some memorable characters too. So Debbie Downer is an all-timer in my book, as is Rachel Dratch. But Wayne and Garth were an entire generation's voice in a way that I don't think Debbie Downer ever quite got to, although I'm going to keep an eye on this in the coming months. How many times I actually think, oh, that person's a real Debbie Downer, because we know a few of them. We're not going to out them here, but we know a few of them in our world. But I'm giving the point to Ken because of how passionate he is about Wayne and Garth. And so look at this. We're tied at 1-1 after 2 rounds. And if Ken's still trying to fight for his round 1 is any indication, I don't think Steph's getting rid of her Debbie Downer love anytime soon. So we move on to now. We just had the best sketch character of all time. We're going to look at who's playing them. This is the round that maybe is the best bar argument you could ever get into. The best cast member in the history of SNL. Steph Sabraw, you have the floor.
This question gave me a headache, but then suddenly I woke up and the answer was clear. It has to be Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy came at a time when SNL was at its lowest viewership. They were on the chopping block. People didn't know what the future would be for it. And somehow Eddie Murphy showed up with some of the most important and hilarious characters we've ever seen. Buckwheat, Mr. Robinson, Velvet Jones, impressions of James Brown, Stevie Wonder, sketches White Like Me, which changed the way that we talk about race and privilege in America. And he did it in the best way, most effective way, in my opinion, which is to make us laugh while looking at something that's quite disturbing if you really look into it. So without Eddie Murphy, we don't know where the future of SNL would have been. And he reshaped the new type of sketches that they were doing, the new type of characters and jokes that they were willing to take. And in addition to that, Eddie Murphy was one of the most famous while actually on SNL, which definitely garnered more viewership and popularity by getting those double takes between his movies and SNL appearances every single Saturday night.
Just full disclosure to everybody watching right now, it warms my heart that Steph took Eddie Murphy because I'm sure that all of us on screen right now have had conversations about how much we love Eddie Murphy. And so, Ken, I'm just telling you right now, the bar has been set very high, but I do believe in you and your comedic prowess. That, by the way, I've seen Steph in the audience when you're on stage making people laugh. And so you do hold some sway here, but it's a tough argument to counter. Don't worry about that yet. Just give us a nice opening statement. Who you think is the best cast member in Saturday Night Live history?
I'm not going to rebut yet, but this is a debate of star versus spine is what it comes down to. Everything Steph has said is 100% right about Eddie Murphy. I looked at this from the other angle of the best cast member and cast, not one star, but cast. And that to me has got to be the man who had the nickname Glue, which is Phil Hartman from the 86 to a 93 era. Over 70 characters. He had the ability to be a star character, a catchphrase character, unfrozen caveman lawyer, anal retentive chef, the old-time movie star guy. What are you saying? Tell me the truth with Lovitz. But he also, you mentioned the Matt Foley sketch. He was the straight man, the father. He was one who lifted everyone else up, whether it was helping Jan Hooks with her stage fright behind the scenes, whether it was helping to usher in a new era of SNL, which ends up not being one of my favorite eras, but he was a mentor for a lot of those folks. And his tragic loss, not factoring that into this conversation, was felt amongst so many people. He was there to help start a new era. He was there to help build the era after, and all the way through, he was the absolute backbone of the show. Again, I use that word a lot, a template of what they kind of needed and looked for. Eddie Murphy, star. Phil Hartman, spine of the show. That's why he's my choice for best cast member.
And that is how you give an opening argument, kids. By the way, our nickname for our great celebrated director here, Christian Rubalcaba, is in fact Glue. So, hi, Glue. Thanks for making us look good. All right, Steph, back to you for a rebuttal now. Why is Eddie Murphy better than Phil Hartman? I feel like it's sacrilege to even ask it.
It really is. It makes me kind of sick to my stomach that I have to give this argument, but I will, because Phil Hartman is one of the greatest to ever do it. RIP, truly legendary work. But would that legendary work have been on screen if it wasn't for Eddie Murphy resurging the popularity in SNL? We really don't know how SNL would have played out, what the future of Phil Hartman would have been on SNL if it wasn't for Eddie Murphy invigorating American viewership on SNL. So, and when we talk about what the heart and soul of SNL is, yes, it is the way that he did have the nickname Glue, but we remember the sketches, we remember the characters. And I think that Eddie Murphy has some of the most, if not the most number of iconic characters and impressions that we've ever gotten on SNL. So for that reason, I think Eddie Murphy has to take the crown.
Okay, Ken, I'm going to tennis it back to you. Again, everybody watching, this is just my job. I'm torn. I feel like the mom at the end of the movie, The Good Son, right now. I don't want to drop either one off the ledge. Phil Hartman, Eddie Murphy. Ken, you're taking Phil Hartman. Why?
Look, Eddie's electric. Eddie is a star, and he did save the show. There's no debating that. The Gene Dominion era was going to sink the show. They took some big swings. It didn't work out, right? But when he left and he became such a big star, he kind of had to leave, right? 48 hours, all the stuff going on. There was nothing left on the bone. There was great cast members, talented Tim Kazurinsky, one of my favorites, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Gary Kroger, Brett Hall, all these names that, had some talent attached to them, but they didn't get a chance to shine. And so when he left, the show fell apart again. And when Lorne Michaels returned and had one really bad season, 85, 86, the show was on the chopping block again. They needed to do something else. And it was Phil Hartman that was brought in from the groundlings late. He was in his late 30s when he comes in here. And again, helps build up the show. And at times in early 90s, it struggles again, but it never really got to that pure chopping block point like it did after the 85-86 season, which it was post Eddie. So it was a repeating cycle then, but Hartman comes in here and just wows everyone with his talent, his skill, and his mentorship.
If you get Ken Napzok sleepy enough when he's talking about this stuff, he really confuses SNL with baseball because both the seasons sound 85, 86, 86, 87, but
especially batting average 500.
Is that the year Terry Sweeney played second base for the Yanks? I think it was.
We got him off track. Sabraw's got him right where she wants him. Steph, back to you for your final statement on the greatness celebrating Eddie Murphy.
Well, I think when comedy is its strongest and most powerful, Mark, you pointed this out earlier, is when we can have hard political discussions and discussions about race and privilege. And Eddie Murphy is one of those people who, just by design, by his life, how he's lived, who he is, and being a Black comedian, especially at this time, he was able to bring up topics that other people could not bring to the forefront. So you just have to think Mr. White showed us a world that many Black Americans have been trying to show us how whites live for a long time. And we are forever grateful for that. That's like flipping the entire lens, the way Americans viewed an existence, and in a funny way. And no one else could do it like Eddie Murphy.
That's the clip out of the show right there. No one else could do it like Eddie Murphy. But Phil Hartman, like Ken, you said, he was the spine where Eddie was the star. So you have one more statement to support the late, great Phil Hartman.
I want to acknowledge Steph is right. I was a young white kid in suburbia who saw that sketch and went, oh, I see something now. Yeah. Steph's right about that. Absolutely. And Eddie is a superstar. I just always look at Phil, the warmth of his characters, the getting to the heart of all of us, getting, the Clinton stuff was fun. That's the headline stuff. But Phil's ability to lift everyone else up with him was his lasting legacy. And I just think of that last moment with him and Farley on stage as they sing as the show fades away, and what a angelic moment that ended up unfortunately being for both of them. But it speaks to the warmth of the soul of Phil Hartman. He was the soul of a show that absolutely needed one following the uproarious mid-'80s.
I was going to bring that up too, is that nice little sweet moment that we got with Phil Hartman and Chris Farley saying goodbye to the show after so many great years and great runs. And we don't want to have to remember them. We want them still here on earth, like with Eddie Murphy. But if we had to let them fly to the next chapter, that's a pretty nice way to remember them. But Phil Hartman also, you can see how much every cast member loved working with him, because he popped up in so many movies during and after his SNL run, just because everybody loved working with him. They knew he could be the glue on a big time movie set, as well as with a very fast paced, frenetic sketch show that was going week after week after week. And I love what you said about him being the spine where Eddie was the star. But as I've told you and anybody else who will hear me within earshot, that Eddie became the star, and he was also the spine of that show in the early 80s, because as really both of you pointed out, that show was going to be toast. It was on the verge of being canceled. And Phil Hartman was part of a cast that saw a monster, much needed resurgence, or else we're not talking about Saturday Night Live in terms of it still running. But Eddie Murphy was the first person to step up to the plate and almost single-handedly put that show on his back like Atlas and carried it through a number of seasons. He was the reason that you tuned in. And it's one of the very few times in the history of any program that you could say, I'm watching it more for this particular individual than I am the name brand of the show. And so, whereas Phil Hartman gets all the roses I could possibly throw his way in my book, the reason why we still get to enjoy Saturday Night Live today is most thanks still to the comet that hit in the early 1980s, that being the incredible Eddie Murphy. So Eddie Murphy gets the point here, but God, y'all really are giving me stress.
I mean,
this is the hardest. It was so hard.
I mean, I think I was drunk in New York recently. We said, I think the answer is Eddie Murphy. And then, here I am talking about the wonderful Phil Hartman. You could go either way.
But it is a great point you bring up, because again, Phil Hartman may be the principal reason of that new cast, why the show continued to run and run so well afterwards. And so there's a lot of saviors of the show, but also don't forget that Eddie Murphy simply carried the show for a couple of years. Just think about the initial not ready for primetime player cast that he had to follow, stepping into those huge footprints. So Eddie Murphy won for the ages, as is Phil Hartman. But as it stands today, our scoreboard is 2-1 in favor of Steph Sabraw. And so the Whirl girl can give winning a whirl here today if she gets one more category correct. But standing in her way is just a juggernaut of sketch comedy love, and that is Ken Napzok. So, Ken, you get the opening salvo as we head into round 4, the best generation group. The best generation group of SNL. We talked about great sketch characters, great cast members, but now it's the team as a whole. What's the best locker room era of all time
Yeah.
in Studio 8H?
Yeah, look, I might have voted for Steph every round. That's how great her answers are and great explaining here. There's a lot of wonderful eras of the show, and the original cast era is what it is. It's legendary. I love the acting chops of the 2006-7 to 2012 range with people like Kristen Wiig, Jason Sudeikis, Bill Hader. But I go again, and I realize all my answers seem to be from the same area. It's not just because I was in junior high then. I really looked at this, and you kind of touched upon it, Mark. I touched upon it. The show was going to go away again. They convinced Michaels to come back, and then that didn't even work. He needed to go all the way back to the beginning and build it back up. And Dana Carvey, Nora Dunn, Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks, Victoria Jackson, John Lovitz, Dennis Miller, Kevin Nealon as a featured player, then eventually Rep, A. Whitney Brown, Al Franken, and then many more that came. And I'm looking at the 86 to like 92 era. Now, I'll say this first, and I will concede this point to Steph. The biggest problem with it up top was it was not diverse. This was, I think, directly led to a show like In Living Color coming into existence, which I'm thankful for, but it didn't have to. SNL should have been more diverse a lot early. That's a problem with this cast. That I get. I need to concede that up top. But talking about what this show did, this was Dana Carvey as a superstar. Mike Myers comes in 89, becomes a superstar. Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, a little bit later on, but at the end, Chris Farley in 1990, Tim Meadows, another kind of glue-like cast member. It was, again, one of those template things, but also the modern era of films, characters, merch, all that kind of stuff did not exist until Dana Carvey, Church Lady. No, we didn't have a film, but Wayne and Garth, we talked about that. Sketches like Toonces, Hans and Franz, all those kind of things became true water cooler talk for the next generation that already had been looking at the original cast as titans, but also history. Also something you watched in reruns. The 15th season and beyond, really reignited the show. It put Lorne Michaels back into a little bit more control of the show he helped create when he needed to save it again. It set the template for a lot of things. I always go to that, I know, but it's very important when you're talking about the best. Dennis Miller's a Weekend Update anchor. That's how you were supposed to do it. Dana Carvey is a superstar, build everyone else. That's what you're supposed to do. You need a utility superstar like Hartman. You got Jan Hooks, one of the more underrated performers on the show. Nora Dunn, great actor. Coming their Sweeney Sister sketch, funny stuff.
So you're a fan of the show, is what you're saying.
Fan of the show. I'll wrap it up. Did I got 13 minutes? No, I can't believe it. It was a rock star era without the rock star attitude.
It's okay if our comedians here jog the light a little bit because of the passion and the ferocity with which you love this 86 to 92 era. It did inspire a lot of water cooler talk, and it also made whoever was sitting closest to the copy machine at work the most annoying person at your job. Steph Sabraw, your era, countering 1986 to 1992. What's your answer for the best cast era?
Well, I'll say this, Ken, I could listen to you talk all day long. You're a killer. And it's hard to argue with you, but I want to take everyone to a time in American history that was quite sad. This is post 9/11. America had shifted. We had become a more depressed country than we had seen in the prior decades, I could argue. And what did we need? Comedy. And how did we do it? By having the first female head writer in SNL history. I'm talking about Tina Fey, a household name that you hear every single day. And what her mark on SNL shifted the way that SNL did sketches. Like I said earlier, this is when we really started getting into pop culture and they started to focus on that in a way. And then you want to just talk about the cast that they had. Probably one of the most star-filled casts inside SNL and outside SNL. You had the tail end of Will Ferrell's SNL career. The last 2 years, possibly his best 2 years on SNL, arguably. You have Jimmy Fallon, Tracy Morgan, Maya Rudolph, Horatio Sands, Amy Poehler, Rachel Dratch, Chris Parnell, Fred Armisen, Daryl Hammond, Will Forte. These are people that you see and love every day to this day, but it all started in their early 2000s on SNL. They had some of the most iconic sketches that I think in the YouTube generation, my generation growing up, probably have the most views viewership because that's when we got to see it. And I'm not saying that that makes them better sketches, but I think it makes it a little bit more impactful in terms of how we view SNL to this day. So for that reason, so much came out of that, including Debbie Downer and so many other great sketches. So this was my era. This is a top dog era for me.
I see what both y'all are doing, by the way. I see every one of y'all with your answers reminding me that I might have made a mistake in ruling one way or the other in previous rounds. So props to both of you for doing that. And you're also tugging at my heartstrings here because, Steph, you talk about how needed a great cast was post 9/11, where we all wanted to go somewhere to laugh. But then, Ken, you also talk about 86 to 92, the tail end of that was when I started to come into my own and say, you know what, I might never be a professional athlete. Probably going to have to give this funny thing a shot. So you have the first shot at a very tough rebuttal, but I think you're up to the task again. And it's just 30 seconds ish. So okay, if you want to jog, I'll get a good tweet going.
Yeah, I'll take the time note. Here's the thought. After that era, 92, 93, it became a horrible boys club. Saturday Night's always struggled with that. But in the mid-90s, the show fell apart again. And that's when they needed to realize in 96, 97, they needed to get back to what they had. A true ensemble, build stars out of that. And that is what that 86 cast did as well. And just some absolute legends. It's not Dana Carvey's fault that Opportunity Knocks wasn't on YouTube first. All right? That's just a thing of the era. And I was there opening night. One of the greatest moments of my life. There you go. That's why I like the 86 era.
All right. And Steph, your counter once again to why the post 9/11, we'll say the early 2000s to the late 80s, very early 90s is better.
I'm going to use my water bottle and my lipstick to demonstrate a cowbell. Also, one of the greatest sketches of all time, also came out of this era. Never forget more freaking cowbell. You can never have enough cowbell. That's just one of the many sketches that came out of this era. We also had Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, the first time two women co-anchored Weekend Update, and my favorite sector of Weekend Update ever to be had. So this is why this is the best era.
Wait,
Ken,
Mark.
you got a good pair of headphones. It looks like there. Did that sound like Blue Oyster Cult actually doing the cowbell?
But Chop and Brock.
Yeah. You got more cowbell versus Chop and Broccoli. Ken, your final statement as to why the late 80s, early 90s reign supreme-ish with SNL.
My final statement is I love the era Steph's talking about. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. You want to give it a point? I understand. But go back to that era. Go back to Carvey, Myers, Neil and News from 10 feet away. I don't care what you think about Dennis Miller now, but back then he was a rock star on the Weekend Update desk. It was an amazing, electric era, and I absolutely love it.
And maybe the funniest line from that era was Dennis Miller welcoming Chris Farley to the show by saying, "Did I just see the new guy's?" So with that, we go back to Steph for your final argument. Early 2000s is the best. Why?
I see what you're doing here, Ken, and I wouldn't blame you either, Mark, if you went with Ken's groups. It is such an incredible era. I agree with it, but I really think that what Tina Fey did is historic. And we talk about how SNL a lot of times was a boys club. And when she came into the scene, she not only just proved that women are funny and they're not women comedians, they're just freaking comedians. And then that ushered in a whole new era where the names that come to mind now are Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph, Amy Poehler. This changed the landscape of comedy for women and the way we view comedy as a greater whole as a people. And we can actually view women with brains that can be funny and not just faces.
And I think I brought up Bridesmaids at the top of the show just because you have so many people that were sort of developing their careers at Saturday Night Live. And like you said, Tina Fey being the head writer there was such a landmark shift and such a quality one. So we have the current host of The Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon, from that era. And we have, for my money, the best award show host that money can buy, much better than the guy talking right now, Amy Poehler and Tina Fey. I'd love to see them walk on any stage and host. And so you pin that against the late 80s, early 90s, where you have some of the biggest blockbuster stars still to this day in movie history emerging from there. But what did they actually do on the show? And this is, I think, where I'm ruling this most prominently is that the biggest difference that I see, besides how much more progressive and necessarily so that the early 2000s was that Steph made a great job in pointing out that this was post 9/11 and SNL saw a huge bump in ratings simply because we needed somewhere to go to laugh at a crucial turning point in American history. By contrast, we weren't going to Saturday Night Live anymore for laughs for whatever the 80s were throwing at us by that point in time, for the most part, with SNL. And it wasn't a event that happened in America that made us come back. It was simply the quality of the cast that was put together once Lorne Michaels was firmly back in charge of SNL. And so, whereas we knew we could go to SNL for laughs versus we never thought we would be going back to SNL for laughs again, that's why I think the late 80s might have been a little more important just in terms of the show. Culturally, I completely agree with Steph that we were so in need of what we got in the early 2000s. But in terms of the show itself, and also because I'm a very selfish host and I want to see a tiebreaker around here, I'm giving the point to Ken. It is 2-2 as we get into sudden death overtime. It's not really sudden death because you each get, hey, NFL, are you taking notes? Each team gets the ball and has a chance to score a touchdown. And then I'm going to make a ruling. So you each get a minute for round 5, and then we're done. There's no final statement. There's no rebuttal. It's just you each get your moment. And then once again, I have all the pressure heaped upon my shoulders, which are not nearly as mighty as Eddie Murphy's or Phil Hartman's. So it's 2-2. Steph, you had a lead. It's now a tie, so you get to kick us off here in the overtime sudden death round. It's a tiebreaker, and the topic is the best recurring host in the history of SNL. There's been a lot of great one-offs over the years. There's been so many great stars from every corner of entertainment, of sports, whatever you want to throw, music, whatever you want to throw at SNL, they can make it funny. But in the history of the program, 47 years running now, who is the best recurring host? Minute on the clock.
A lot of people think that Tom Hanks is America's dad, but I happen to think it's Steve Martin. Steve Martin, you can't have in a conversation with SNL and not put the 2 and 2 together. Steve Martin was there from the inaugural season of SNL. He is integrated in the very core and existence of SNL. And that's why he is, to me, the best reoccurring host. He has some of the best sketches. He brought out some of the best performances from the cast members we know and love to Wild and Crazy guys I'll never forget, to name a few. King Tut was one of them. And he just had so many. And not only that was he great in the sketches, he was great at hosting it. Some of his monologues were my favorite monologues of all time, and you never got sick of Steve Martin, and we still never get sick of Steve Martin. Anytime he appears on screen, we love seeing Steve Martin because he just brings out the heart and soul of what SNL stands for.
So it's not all that spicy of a take as it turns out, Ken, because there is a chance Steve Martin is America's dad over Tom Hanks. I don't know. That's a debate for another day, but Steph just gave me something to wrestle around in my brain the rest of the afternoon. Your answer, Ken, and your counter to Steve Martin for the best recurring host in Saturday Night Live history is?
My answer is Alec Baldwin. And I cannot morally argue against Steve Martin because Steve Martin's the reason I'm here. He's a big icon in my comedy life. So I'll just say this about Alec Baldwin. April 21st, 1990, B-52's musical guest, Alec Baldwin, the host. He was a movie star, a heartthrob, a good-looking leading man. And he shows up to promote a movie and starts to slowly change the course and trajectory of his career. When the movies are up and going, he's fighting a bear with Anthony Hopkins or whatever the hell he's doing out there. He started to develop this other side of his career, his personality, and worked so well with every single cast, whether it was kind of the mid-90s Sandler era, whether it was the smarter Tina Fey-led era, whether it was the wonderful kind of bold, viral, ready for viral video, late 2010 era. And then he eventually almost becomes essentially a cast member with the Trump stuff. But it all began when he showed up and surprised everyone with his ability to go from leading man to comedy cast member, ensemble host of SNL. It was no longer about him. It was about the show they were putting together. That's why Alec Baldwin is my answer.
I love that of all the movies that you could have pulled out that Alec Baldwin might have been there to promote, you pulled The Edge, starring, I believe, Elle Macpherson also makes a cameo, and a great performance by a bear in there. What movie was Alec Baldwin promoting the very first time? Was it Miami Blues? Do you remember?
I cannot remember that. I mean, it was not too far from Beetlejuice, but that's I don't know that movie release date off the top.
Beetlejuice was 88, and so I think it was probably past then. But I mean, the filmography of Alec Baldwin and Steve Martin is a great debate that we could actually have for another day. But for right now, Steve Martin versus Alec Baldwin. I mean, these really are the two GOATs, right? When we talk about recurring hosts, there's others like Tom Hanks that have made their mark. There's been great cast members that have been welcomed back to the show since, that have made their mark as a host now. Peyton Manning is great. Michael Jordan had some great moments. So there's so many great stars. But if we're doing Steve Martin versus Alec Baldwin, I feel like I could go Canteen Boy or I could go King Tut. But I think the tiebreaker in the tiebreaker round is this. When you get into a conversation about our third round, who's the best cast member of all time, a lot of times people inadvertently say Steve Martin, even though he was never an actual cast member. That's how seamlessly Steve Martin was integrated into the show, albeit at the time, initially, when he was the biggest stand-up comic in the world, selling out stadiums. And then he got so big, the Blues Brothers, also an SNL creation, opened for him right down the road from us at the LA Forum. And so while Alec Baldwin has given us so many chuckles and memories, and Ken does make a great point that he basically kept hanging out of the show and was so brilliant as Trump in this most recent run. If you go back and you look at the all-time best recurring host, Steve Martin had the leg up from the start on Alec Baldwin because he'd been doing it for 14 years more than Alec Baldwin had when he first arrived. But I still have to give it to the OG and maybe America's stepdad, if nothing else. Steve Martin gets the win, and by proxy, Steph Sabraw gets the win today. Ken, I would love to take you out to a friend's lunch at our favorite place, Wood Ranch, if you'll allow it. I know it breaks my heart to make this decision, so I'm going to apologize to Ken first.
Look, the greatest monologue of all time is "Not gonna phone it in tonight." That is Steve Martin. That is the greatest monologue of all time. Steph, well done.
Steph, congratulations.
Thank you. Maybe we can do a remix of Two Wild and Crazy Guys featuring you two, and there'll be two wild and crazy guys and a girl, and then I'll just come in as like the new Debbie Downer.
That would be great if Ken and I are just having a ball with our ridiculous costumes, and then Debbie Downer Steph comes. See, we're making more comedy gold on the program already. So Steph Sabraw is your champion today, but really the winner is everybody who just got to watch a walk down memory lane. But we're not done here as far as SNL goes, because it's been a great kickoff to season 47. We all were so young, and so I don't think the show is losing any steam anytime soon. But not enough love for Bill Murray. Come on, Bill Murray he's my America's dad. So Bill Murray will give you more love next time. We love you. You're welcome to come stalk us at any bar or watering hole or wash the dishes at my place, whatever you want to do. I know you love random stuff. Have at it, my friend. So right now, Steph Sabraw, we get to talk to you first as our winner here today. What is a streaming recommendation that you have for all the kids watching out there that doesn't have to harken back to SNL in any meaningful way, but just something that you think everybody who might have enjoyed today's episode should check out in the future?
I think if you're a fan of Lonely Island or anything that they did, then you absolutely have to check out Dave on FX. It is, with Lil Dicky, one of the funniest, most poignant shows that I've seen. And it talks about topics of mental illness in a way that is so good while being funny. And then also Insecure final season dropping. And that is one of the greatest shows. Issa Rae is just a comedy writing legend.
Insecure continued to break my heart with every twist and turn of that somewhat doomed relationship, but you're still rooting for it. And Dave is a tremendous show and a tremendous comic. Andrew Santino featured in that cast. Ken, you're here, you're hanging around, you're a good sport, you're a great competitor, and you are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to really the history of sketch TV in general, SNL included. So what is the streaming recommendation that you have for everybody out there watching today?
I'm going to sneak in a second choice. Sorry, producers. I do want to mention and this is why you made the right decision with that Steve Martin choice. Only Murders in the Building. I'm absolutely enjoying. I'm loving it. Steve Martin, Martin Short, Selena Gomez. By the way, it's a great generational marker. If you're like, hey, you watched the new Steve Martin show? Do you mean the Selena Gomez show? Yeah. It's a wonderful show, and it is got the heart that Steve brings to a lot of things. Can't recommend that enough. The other thing that it's now available out there, I think on Amazon Prime, all 5 seasons of Kids in the Hall as they get ready for their big reunion, the comeback show. Kids in the Hall is another great comedy influence on me. McKinney and Bruce McCullough, Mark McKinney and Bruce McCullough wrote for the show in 85, 86. McKinney comes back to be a cast member in the mid-90s, and love everything about them. Scott Thompson, Kevin McDonald, and the rest of the gang there. Dave Foley, just love them. Check out Kids in the Hall if you haven't had a chance to yet.
And you go all the way back to SCTV and how many stars that gave us. And so there's just so much great sketch comedy out there to enjoy. If you're a stand-up fan, then you can actually see some guy. Let me read this card right. Ken Napzok. I haven't heard of him. He's going to be performing alongside me in Washington, D.C. almost at Christmas time, December 16th through 19th. You can get your tickets at markellis.live. And that is going to be a hootenanny, and we'll be 2 wild and crazy guys that night. We'll send you a FaceTime, Steph. That is your winner, Steph Sabraw. You can follow her on social media at Steph Sabraw. That is Ken Napzok, and you can follow him on social media at Ken Napzok. They made it easy for you. I just had to put an extra word in mine at Mark Ellis Live, where you can find me. For the great team here at Rotten Tomatoes, our engineer/director, Christian Brubel-Caba, Steph, and Ken, I am merely Mark Ellis saying thank you and good night from New York or LA.